Welcome everybody on YouTube. Hello. TikTok is ready. Boom. TikTok. I think we're gonna have trolls today. I called the show "Putin is Humiliated." I don't think the trolls are gonna like that. I don't think so. All right, there we go. Boom. Boom. How many minutes do you think it'll take before a Palestinian person tries to storm the show obnoxiously, as they always do? Welcome, guys. Welcome, TikTokers. How's everybody doing today? Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm John Aravosis. Hey, guys. Hey, who's that? Geo. Hey, Geo. Such a fun day. Fun. You're tired? I had a nap today, which made me very sleepy much of the day, although I'm feeling pretty good now. So I think it might have finally paid off my nap. I'm just getting the happy Monday. I'm getting my my fan on for the get ready for the you lie card. Like, you lie. Here we go. Okay, fan is on. Cool is set. All right. Actually, the cool should already be on. Hopefully shortly. Well, it should go on shortly. All right. Anyway, welcome everybody. Welcome. Yes, so lots of news today. We're doing Ukraine. Today's Ukraine Day. Lots of Ukraine news, which we will talk about. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Richard. No notification. That's TikTok, you know. Hey, Pedro, thank you for the gift. Hello, YouTube. Hello, Discord. So, yeah, we are going to talk about Ukraine today. We're going to talk about the Ukrainians bombing the Russians. Very interesting news. What does this mean? Let's find out. I had a good day. Yeah, I had my reunion this weekend at Georgetown. We had a nice picnic yesterday, so that was swell. But then I got back and I was tired. I had to take the dog out, so I didn't want to. And there wasn't really enough news yesterday. Let me rephrase this. As you know, Ukraine launched a massive attack against Russia. We're going to update you on that today. There is some more detail today. Actually, there is more detail. Last night, there wasn't really any detail, I don't think. Thank you, Jazak. There wasn't anything new since yesterday morning. We're getting more now. Let me walk you through kind of what the Ukrainians did. Then I've got a lot of detail that I've copied off the web, Wall Street Journal, Guardian, Washington Post, New York Times, etc. And we'll talk a little bit about The Economist. We'll talk about what the Ukrainians did, how they did it, because the details here are absolutely hilarious and fascinating. We'll talk about what the impact is, if any. We'll talk about Trump's reaction, which was actually rather shocking. So that was kind of fun too. Anyway, so let's get rolling here. So what Ukraine did yesterday, Ukraine attacked Russia's bombing force, its air force. They specifically went after Russian bombers that are used to bomb Ukraine. But they are bombers, so they carry cruise missiles, and Russia fires the cruise missiles at Ukraine, kills lots of civilians. The bombers are also dual use. They are Russia's nuclear bombers. Russia would use these planes if it ever got into a nuclear war with America. They're comparable, for example, to maybe America's B-52s, which all of us have heard of B-52s, the big bombers, right? So comparable, meaning just to give you a sense of what they are. Well, Ukraine went yesterday and blew up a lot of them. Videos show lots of serious damage. The Ukrainians claim they blew up 41 of Russia's bombers. Now, keep in mind, Russia has over 100 bombers, but not all of them work, right? This isn't just, Russia's pretty bad, but this isn't just Russia. A lot of typically some of your tanks aren't going to work. Some of your planes aren't going to work. Oh, thank you for the wings. Very cool. Thank you, Ash. Some of the planes aren't going to work. That's just sort of typical. The estimate of how many bombers Russia has operational are anywhere from the 70s to maybe 90. If in fact Ukraine took out 41 of these bombers, they may have taken out half, if not more than half, of Russia's nuclear bombers. Now, that matters in terms of bombing Ukraine, because it makes it harder for the Russians to bomb Ukraine. It also matters in terms of global thermonuclear war. If Russia ever got into a nuclear war with America and Europe, they need those bombers. Those bombers are 1/3 of the way Russia and America also launch nuclear wars, right? Our nukes, we've got nuclear weapons on planes, on the bombers, cruise missiles. We have nuclear weapons in the ground, silos, which we're all familiar with, right? They come out of the ground. Woo! We've also got nuclear missiles on submarines, nuclear submarines. And it's three different ways, and in Russia, I was reading in Russia, what's interesting is they're not really equal ways. The bombing force is actually kind of first among equals because Russia has problems with their subs. They got problems with the ground. Actually, the ground forces, nobody knows how well the ground nukes even work in Russia. So they rely sort of disproportionately on their planes to, if there were ever nuclear war. Well, half those planes could be gone now. Can Russia fix them? Good luck. They haven't made these planes since 1991. If the planes are gone, they cannot make new planes. They're gone. Even repairing them, people are saying it's not looking good. The question now becomes, how many planes did Ukraine take out? The Ukrainians say they hit 41. Now, typically, historically, Ukraine tends not to lie about such things. We found that the Ukrainians don't really exaggerate. The Ukrainians don't tell us things that they've accomplished in the war that we then go, oh, they lied to us, right? The Russians do a lot, a lot. The Ukrainians, not so much. They don't usually lie. So that's the first thing. If Ukraine says they hit 41 planes, they probably hit 41 planes. The initial satellites today were showing at least 14 planes seriously damaged or destroyed. But that's just like the initial satellite imagery from like one or two battlefields, right? We have not seen across the board. What I mean is, it is not an initial assessment that only 14 were destroyed. So far, they've been able to identify 14 that were destroyed. That's really good so far. So we'll see. It's going to take a few more days with this. Evie asks, been a little while, but wanted to ask, because I know others are thinking of Evie. Evie asked, what's the potential for a nuclear response to this attack? Most are saying none, but wanted your opinion. So two different things. And we'll go through more details of the attack too, but Evie, generously enough, had bought her question, so she gets priority. Two things. One, is Russia going to go to nuclear war with us? Hardy har har har. That's never going to happen. Why? Because we have nukes too. Russia nukes us, we nuke them. And the Brits and the French would nuke Russia too. So that's not going to happen. The question becomes, would Russia respond to Ukraine with nuclear weapons? Well, two things. One, if they thought they could get away with it, would be the first question. Do they think they could get away with it? Do they think we would respond? Well, there's a pretty good chance that China would be very upset, and China's Russia's top ally. India would be very upset. India is an important, at least economic ally of Russia in the war, even though they're not an ally in the war, but they're important. NATO. What would Donald Trump do? God only knows. NATO overall could go to war with Russia if Russia uses nuclear weapons. They're on the border of Poland. And who else is it? Hungary, which may not care because he's kind of a wannabe Russian dictator. But Hungary, who else have we got? Romania, Slovakia, I think, is on the border. Poland, Turkey's close by. NATO's going to be very upset if nukes start going off on its border. They're going to worry about radiation coming over. They're going to worry about what Russia's going to do next. Secondly, NATO really doesn't have a choice but to go to war if Russia uses nukes, because we cannot have a precedent set in today's day and age that people are using nuclear weapons, right? This is not 1944 or 1945, I should say, right? This is not the Japanese taking over the world. We're in the modern era now. It's almost been 100 years. We cannot send the signal that if Russia uses nukes, it's okay. They can use nukes, because then we tell them, go ahead and use nukes in other places too, right? It would be telling the North Koreans they could use nukes. It would be telling the Indians and the Pakistanis. It'd be telling the Israelis, who also have nukes, that they can use nukes. We cannot send that message. So partially it depends. A, does Putin think he can get away with it? Does he think NATO's going to do something? I think NATO probably would. NATO would. Trump, I don't know, but NATO would. Secondly, what does he get out of it? It's not really clear what Putin gets. I mean, if he were to, for example, if he, let's say Putin did a really big nuclear attack on Ukraine and took out Kyiv, then it's war with NATO. I mean, Putin ends up, killing 1 million people in Kyiv, then it's war. I mean, then we're literally at war. There's no way Europe lets him get away with that. I just think Trump, who knows, but Europe, there's no way. Putin could do a smaller attack, but what does it get him strategically? Ukraine's going to back down? No. I mean, if Putin were to use a nuke in Ukraine, sure, the Trump and the MAGA people might cave and say, "Oh my God, let's stop helping Ukraine because Putin's using nukes." But the Europeans might turn around and say, "That's it. This is an act of war, and we are now helping Ukraine until the end." So I think the calculus for Putin is the same it was before. It doesn't really make sense how using nuclear weapons helps him. Let's go back to this. Ukraine. So Ukraine was planning this attack. We're talking about Ukraine doing a massive attack against Russia's nuclear bomber force yesterday. Very successful. They planned the attack for a year and a half. They smuggled 150 drones into Russia. They smuggled, we believe, plastic explosives, C4. That's the guess, at least, because of how big these explosions were. They smuggled in materials to build like what do you call them? Sheds. Yeah, like sheds, basically. They smuggled in wooden stuff to build these sheds that look like the kind of containers you'd put on the back of a truck. Okay. They then, and I just found the information now, they hired Russian truck drivers so the Ukrainians sneak in, they bring plastic explosives, they bring the drones, they bring materials to create sheds, okay? To make sheds. And then they build the sheds. They then hire truck drivers, Russian truck drivers, to put these sheds on the back of the Russian trucks, and they drive them around the country. Now, these sheds contain Ukrainian drones ready and plastic explosives. The truck drivers don't know what's going on. They drive around the country. I'm going to read you this in a second. The drivers were hired to just drive around. So they drive around. They got like one driver said, it was like literally out of a spy novel. Once I got close, I got a phone call telling me where to drop it off. I dropped it off. Well, the truck driver drops it off. The Ukrainians, from as far as 3,000 miles or 5,000 kilometers away, the Ukrainians use the Russian cell phone network, the mobile network, to open the back of the shed. So this now shed is on a truck bed, a lorry bed, right? And the top opens up automatically from 3,000 miles away. The Ukrainians open the top of the shed, and I don't know how many sheds they had. They had a lot of them. I think in one location alone, there might have been 4 sheds at one of the bases. The shed roof opens up automatically. Again, they're controlling it from Ukraine. They open the shed roof and the drones come flying out. Now they're controlling the drones long distance too. Once the drones got closer to the targets, the drones also had AI helping them out to identify the right plane to go after. Now, the Ukrainians reportedly used some planes that I think they've got on display at museums, and also some good satellite imagery of planes that the Russians have at museums themselves. They use the Russian museum planes to train their drones to attack those planes. So the planes come in, the drones, 117 of the drones made it. It looks like one of the trailers at least kind of blew up. So 117 drones attack. They've got plastic explosives, FPV drones. Yep. First person view drones. And they blew up the Russian planes. And the rest was history. Let me read you some of this. A Ukrainian intelligence source said it was unlikely the drivers of the trucks knew what they were carrying. Russian investigators have questioned the drivers of the trucks from Russian media. One of the drivers, a 55-year-old man from Chelyabinsk named Alexander Z, said the truck belonged to a 37-year-old man named Artyom. Some time ago, Artyom had received an order from a businessman based in Murmansk who requested the transportation of 4 prefabricated houses from Chelyabinsk to the Kola district of Murmansk. The 2 men agreed upon a price, and Alexander loaded the cargo into his truck and set off. According to him, while en route, an unknown individual contacted him by phone and gave him specific instructions on when and where to stop. The final stop was near a Rosneft gas station close to a military airfield in Murmansk. It was from that location the drones were launched. A similar story was shared by another truck driver, 61-year-old Andre M., who said he also worked for Artyom. Artyom's in real trouble. His task was to transport prefabricated houses to the Irkutsk region. However, when he parked near the Teremok Cafe in Ulsia-Sirbirsk or whatever, drones began to take off from the back of his truck. Now, It's not clear whether the drones taking off was on purpose or whether maybe it screwed up and the drones took off. But I mean, these crazy Ukrainians hired Russians unwittingly to do this. It's absolutely brilliant what they did. They're talking about as much as $7 billion worth of damage to the Russian planes. That's 7 billion euros. What else have I got here? I've got like sort of more. Let me read you a little bit from the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal had a really good analysis and data on this. A sizable portion of the fleet Moscow uses to launch guided missile attacks on Ukraine and would rely on to strike adversaries in the event of a nuclear war was damaged or destroyed in the coordinated attacks. This is Wall Street Journal. Russia no longer produces the decades-old Tupolev planes that were targeted in the attacks, meaning it has lost a cornerstone of its ability to project military power beyond its borders. This is interesting because it gets to why this is much bigger than Ukraine. This is part of Russia's force projection, its power projection around the world it uses using these planes being gone, very, very, very bad. The newer Russian planes are more modern and agile, but lack vital characteristics of the destroyed bombers. Most significantly, their range and the quantity of munitions they can carry. So the newer planes can't go as far and they can't carry as many weapons. If they can't go as far, they've got to be closer. If they're closer, they're more at risk of getting bombed. So anyway, according to Ukraine and open source intelligence analysts, the attack also destroyed a rare plane Russia uses for airborne command and control, another capability vital to modern warfare. That's what somebody was getting at here. I'm forgetting who. So like one of you was saying that Andre was saying it, that basically they went after bombers, but the Ukrainians claim they blew up maybe 2 of the Russian AWACS planes. Or AWACS type planes. We call them AWACS, but they're the 747s that have the big circular UFO pancake on top, and they're used for airborne control, guidance, looking at everything in the airspace from planes to missiles to everything. A-50s, was that what they're called? Red, I'm forgetting what they're called. If they were destroyed, that would be a huge deal as well. The Russians have very few of them. A-50s are the Russian AWACS. Thank you, Terrence. The Russians have very few of those. I mean, I don't know if I have it in front of me. I want to say maybe the Russians have 4. I mean, it was a very small number I remember reading. So if the Ukrainians destroyed 2 of them, this is not going to be good for Russia. Yeah, they had Big Hawk heard 4 as well. That was the number that stuck in my head. A little more here. Of the more than 100 Tupolev bombers that Russia is known to have, Ukraine said it had damaged or destroyed more than 40. A full assessment will take time, but open source intelligence analysts counted at least 14 damaged aircraft using satellite images and video posted online. It is unclear how many were operational before the strike. The planes Ukraine hit fill a role in Russia's Air Force fleet, roughly comparable to American B-52s and B-1 bombers. Hang on. Keeping planes far from Russia. Oh, I see. So because the Ukrainians had previously bombed Russian air forces, the Russians had to put planes farther away. And the Russians basically had to move their planes thousands of miles away because the Ukrainians kept bombing them. Well, now that the Ukrainians have bombed them again, Russia's really in trouble because now moving your plane far away isn't enough. You've got to hide the plane. Typically, the Russians and also we, the Americans, we don't hide our bombers as much because you're not really worried about somebody coming in and bombing them. Like you'd see the attack coming. Now you will not necessarily see the attack coming. So this throws a wrench, well, for the world, really, not just for Russia, but it throws a wrench for Russia because they've now got to figure out how to protect their planes all over the country. And that was something they didn't have to worry about before. And now they've got to worry about it. They've got to spend time, money, resources. It just makes fighting the war that much harder, which is good, obviously. Wall Street Journal. Russia now will need to devote more resources to protecting bombers and other valuable military assets. The country has a vast air defense system that it has expanded in recent years, but it lacks sufficient equipment to cover the entire country and protect against all dangers. The deeper issue for Moscow is that its aviation industry shows no sign of being able to design and produce a plane that fills the role of the Tupolevs, the ones that were destroyed. If Ukraine destroyed nearly as many as it is claimed, the loss would represent a deep blow to Russia's status as a global superpower. Repairing them will be difficult, and because none are still in production, they stopped production in 1991, replacing them is impossible. Long-range bombers, this is again why these planes matter to Russia in a bigger sense. Long-range bombers represent vital parts of both Russian and American ability to deliver nuclear weapons in a war. The other two legs of the so-called nuclear triad are submarines and land-based missiles. Russia's Navy has struggled in recent years to maintain and modernize its equipment. The readiness of its land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles and their launch silos is difficult to gauge. But again, it's suspicious as to whether they're actually in any good shape. Russia needs these planes to make sure that its nuclear forces work, and now they may have lost half the planes. The damage to Russia's nuclear deterrent comes as countries in Europe have been stepping up spending on nuclear weapons. So I wrote a few things for impact here of what Ukraine did. It diminishes Russia's nuclear force, which ups the cost of war and diminishes Putin. So basically, the Ukrainians have made it harder for Russia to fight a nuclear war. That's pretty ballsy of them. It does help with regards to the war in Ukraine because Russia now has fewer planes it can use to hit Ukraine. But also, the Ukrainians have made Russia less effective at fighting a nuclear war if America were to attack Russia first. Now, we know we're not going to attack Russia, but they don't know that. They probably think we will. They now have to worry as to whether their response is going to be significant enough. I think it will be. But nonetheless, if you're Russian, there's a lot of analysis going on in Russia right now in military circles as to whether they can hit us back hard enough if we nuke them first. Now, they can. But if you're on the Russian, I say that comfortably as an American, right? If you're Russian, it's the survival of your country that's at risk that you've got to worry about. So that's one big problem. Because of this discussion, it makes Putin look really bad. It makes Putin look like a loser. Basically, right? That he can't even protect his own. Moscow keeps getting bombed. And now we've got possibly half of Russia's nuclear planes, its nuclear bombers getting blown up. It makes Putin look weak. In a dictatorship like Russia, that does not help a dictator stay in power, right? This is what I was going to say. This puts the U.S. on notice. So this is interesting too. This goes back to something I told you guys months ago. This also sends a message to the U.S. and to Europe, okay? Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks for the gifts, guys. Keep the gifts coming. I didn't make a gift pitch at the beginning of the show, but I do this for a living, and I literally pay the bills with your guys' gifts. So please keep them coming on TikTok and YouTube. Gift subscriptions are nice, too. You can even buy gift subscriptions for other people, so throw those in if you want. Appreciate it very much. So Ukraine putting the U.S. on notice and Europe on notice. I have said for a while, and we've got to be careful how we say this on TikTok and YouTube, but Ukraine can do a lot more to hurt Russia in this war. Thank you, Angeline, for the gift. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Jay Shea. The question is, how much can Ukraine get away with, right? For example, they could commit acts of terror, but that could blow up in their face figuratively if America didn't like it and cut off support. If the Europeans, again, let's say Ukraine just did terrorist acts across Russia, the Europeans might not like that. They might cut off weapons. So Ukraine's been holding off for that reason, among others. They could do what they just did, blowing up a bunch of Russian planes. They could go after Moscow much more significantly, right? Thank you, Al. Thank you, Crazy. Ukraine, I think, has been holding off to some degree in terms of some of the. We know this, for example, when Ukraine attacked Moscow. Remember, the Biden administration freaked out and was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" Or the scooter bomb. Exactly. Waiting just noticed Ukraine got yelled at for the scooter bomb. Remember, about a year ago, maybe it was, or at least last winter. I remember it was winter time. It might have been last winter or last fall. Ukraine blew up a Russian general. He was coming out of a house or his house or someone's house at 6 a.m. With an aide, and the Ukrainians got somebody in Moscow to park a scooter outside the building the man was coming out of. The scooter was bombed. It was a piégé in French, suicide bomber scooter. it had a bomb attached to it. Well, the general comes out of the apartment. The Ukrainians have a camera in the car parked across the street. From Ukraine, they are watching the camera. Right? They're watching from the camera all the way from Ukraine in Moscow. And they see the general walk out of the building. They push a button and the bomb goes off on the scooter, kills the general. I mean, brilliant move what the Ukrainians did. Well, the Americans, Biden was not thrilled, right? The Biden people were like, oh my God, this is so scary, right? So there's a lot Ukraine could do, and especially now that we've seen what Ukraine did this weekend, we've seen there's a lot Ukraine's got abilities way beyond what we thought they were capable of. Thank you, Shelby. Thank you, Karis. Thank you, Eslin. So that here's the point I'm getting at here. Thank you, Karis. If we abandon Ukraine, if Trump says, I'm tired and I'm going home, no one wants peace, I don't care, I'm going home, right? And Ukraine gets cut off, and the Europeans can't afford to give Ukraine enough weapons. If I'm Ukraine, I say desperate times demand desperate measures, right? If you're Russia and you're trying to take out my country, and America, my biggest benefactor, well, almost, like Europe's bigger now, says I'm not helping you anymore, and I'm worried about Russia possibly taking over my country, I'm going to do literally everything to try to stop Russia. Again, I got to be careful what I say here because TikTok and YouTube might not like it, but quite literally nothing will be off the table if you are risking taking my country completely. That would mean the Ukrainians would do things like acts of terror and other things that we would not like, right? They might, for example, what if they did an attack like this, but they did it against military headquarters in Moscow, and they hit the military headquarters in Moscow with 117 drones carrying plastic explosives and blew up the entire place, right? They hit the Russian presidential palace. I mean, there's a lot. They hit the Kremlin. They could do a lot of damage that would really freak the Russians out. And if you're American and like Donald Trump, and you say, I don't care anymore, I'm going home. Well, you should care, because the Ukrainians could go so far that maybe the Russians might do something crazy in response. And then we do have World War III. But if I'm Ukraine, it's totally justified. If you're Russia and you're trying to take my country and you're literally talking about wiping my country from the face of the planet, I will do everything to stop you, even if that risks World War III. So that's something that's important. Thank you, PTX. Thank you, Chezek. That I think the Trump administration might be learning here is, Trump had said weeks ago, remember when Trump humiliated Zelensky in the Oval Office, or he tried to at least. Thank you, Big Hawk. When Trump and Vance said, you don't have any cards. You don't have any cards. There's nothing you can do. You're dead. Right? And Trump tried to tell Zelensky. The funny thing is, Michael Weiss was saying this on Twitter, but also on a show on Morning Joe this morning. Zelensky knew when he was in the Oval Office last month and Trump was lecturing him and saying, there's nothing you can do. You don't have any more cards. Zelensky knew they were planning this. That's the really funny part. They knew they were planning this. He couldn't tell Trump, actually, I have a rather big card. We're about to blow up half of the Russian strategic bombers. But he couldn't say that because he knew Trump would potentially tell Putin, right? So in any case, that's another aspect here of the U.S., but also the Europeans, realizing if we give Ukraine weapons, we control Ukraine, right? If we give Ukraine weapons, if Ukraine is reliant on us for weapons, let me put it this way, Ukraine needs to keep us happy, because if we're not happy, we'll stop giving them the weapons. But if we cut Ukraine off entirely, then Ukraine goes, okay. I don't know if they were fiber optic. Otto asked a good question. Does anybody know, were the drones fiber optic? I was seeing reports that were suggesting maybe, but I'm not convinced. I didn't see any detail on this. Now, the reason we ask this is you can have drones. And I mean, this is kind of crazy stuff. I guess the fiber optic, because Vlad was telling us about this. Others are saying no. Drones, the newer drones, I believe can be like, Vlad was telling us actually, they can be connected by like cables so that they can't be jammed, or they're very difficult to jam because you've got a cable like connected to the drone, like it flies a short distance or however distance or whatever. That's what I was going to say. I would think the logistics would be very difficult. Okay. Everyone's saying there's no way. Yeah. Okay. That's what I was thinking. Thank you guys. Yeah. Because people have been talking about fiber optics in the last day or so. I sleep okay. You know what? I'm sorry. Somebody was asking, how do you sleep? Getting all worried about this. No. First of all, I'm old enough that I lived through the Soviet Union times, guys. They were threatening to nuke us every day for, decades. So I was born in the 1960s. 3 decades of my life was spent worrying about the Russians being crazy enough to start a nuclear war. So the idea of, Ukraine and Russia fighting does not freak me out when I had to deal with Russia threatening to nuke Europe in the 1980s and everything else. So those of us that are older, we've been there before with Russia's rah, 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 their threats and stuff. Right. Nuclear drills. I did not have them, but German mentioned he had them. People out west in the U.S., we had tornado drills in school. People in the Western United States, when I was growing up, had nuclear drills. They literally had drills in case of a nuclear attack in school. They were taught what to do. So like when you grow up literally as a kid having nuclear attack drills in your school, this isn't as scary as that, right? You had drills in New York. Interesting. We did not. Well, I should say I did not in Chicago. Thank you, Laddie. It's possible somebody older than me did. Thank you, Kari. I don't know. Is there anybody here who's from the Chicago area that might be late 60s? Well, I mean, no, what I mean is your age is late 60s or older. Because I'm wondering whether older than me had the drills in Chicago. But when I was born, we did not. You did. See, I did not, Cheryl. You're only a little older than me. That's interesting. We did not have nuclear drills. For me in like Oak Lawn and then, wherever, we didn't have them. We had tornado drills. That's interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Grandma did in Peoria. Okay. Anyway, clearly we're seeing a ton of people. It's definitely seems to be 59 in Ned Smith in Louisville. So definitely late 50s in age. Ash, you had them in the 90s? Get out of here. In the 1990s, they had they weren't tornado drills. They were nuclear drills. Okay. I'm kind of fascinated by this because we did not, where I grew up, in the Chicago area, we had tornado drills, but not nuclear. In any case, so the point is, as you're seeing from the comments here, tons of Americans had nuclear attack drills in school. So the idea of Russia being at war with Ukraine is not exactly like, oh my God, we've never had this kind of a threat before. Yeah, we have. No duck and cover drills. All right. Okay. Let me go on here. So let's talk a little bit about the peace talks. So Ukraine did meet with Russia today in Turkey at the peace talks. Russia, let me go through the little checklist here from Sky News. Russia and Ukraine held a second round of peace talks in Istanbul that lasted a little over an hour. Little progress was made other than an agreement to exchange another 1,000 prisoners of war. Russia proposed a 2 to 3 day ceasefire to exchange the bodies of dead soldiers. Ukraine said Russia once again rejected an unconditional ceasefire. The Ukrainian delegation handed the Russian team a list of children it wants returned because the Russians have kidnapped thousands of Ukrainian children, if not hundreds of thousands potentially, that the Russians have kidnapped in order to turn them into Russians. Let me see here. Russia handed Ukraine its list of demands, which includes familiar ultimatums like ceding 5 Ukrainian territories to Russia, Ukrainian elections to get rid of Zelensky, and the country's neutrality. They can't join NATO or whatever. And Turkey's president said he hopes to host Putin, Zelensky, and Trump next time. Trump, the White House did say today, they wouldn't oppose that, which was interesting because, again, Trump was like getting ready to give up. Now, this is fascinating. Because I was thinking Trump was going to be pissed. The reports are the White House was not informed. Now, from what we know, the White House was not informed about this. It's a risk. I'm not convinced I would have told the White House if I were Zelensky, because if you tell the White House, I think they're going to tell Putin, basically, if you tell the White House. Listen to this. Asked about Donald Trump's reaction to Ukraine's drone attack on Russia on Sunday, the White House spokeswoman said, "The reaction is this war needs to come to an end. This war has been brutal from both sides and too many people have died. The president wants this war to end at the negotiating table, and he has made that clear to both leaders, both publicly and privately." That's interesting. I thought the Trump White House, now this is the spokesperson, Trump could still go crazy at 4 a.m., but I thought Trump was going to lose his mind. This is outrageous. Zelensky's a warmonger, right? The kind of stuff Trump has said before about Zelensky. He didn't. This was very reserved. This was not critical from the White House. I am shocked at this response. I am absolutely shocked at this response from the White House. This is a mature response from the White House. This is a good response because basically You're not criticizing you. I mean, you got asked about Ukraine bombing Russia, and you said, I want both sides to stop bombing. So you made it about both sides. I mean, that's not blaming Ukraine. It's very interesting, very interesting. But it also makes me wonder if maybe the White House knew. But I can't imagine Ukraine telling them. I feel like if Ukraine had told the White House, there was a real risk of Putin telling of Trump telling Putin, and that they couldn't afford doing it. So anyway, what else we got here? Actually, that's it. That's all I got for the news. Okay, that's it. So yeah, let's talk about this crazy news though with this. Amazing the Ukrainians pulled this off. Just I mean, viciously effective of them. It's not going to stop the war, but you know what? When you got another country trying to wipe you off the map, you do as much damage as you can. This just did a lot of damage to Russia. Very interesting what the Ukrainians pulled off. We were talking about earlier, just to remind folks, we're talking about Ukraine's audacious attack yesterday, where they blew up potentially half of Russia's nuclear bombers. And they invaded, they snuck 150 drones into Russia. He might be, I think he is actually. I think he is. Does anybody know who this guy is real quick? We've got, I think, a troll on YouTube. I didn't want to ban him yet, but yeah, he's got to be. Yeah, he's a troll. I thought so too, Jason, but I wasn't quite sure, but he's got to be. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, I saw it and I was going, he's got to be a troll. He's a troll. Yeah, he's a troll. Anyway. I doubt it, Cliff. Cliff says, I don't think so. Cliff says, how do you know Putin didn't know and let it happen? Because I don't think this helps Putin. I guess my argument would be, how does it help Putin? Right? It makes Putin look weak. It puts Putin's tenure as president at risk because he could get overthrown. If people think if the military thinks he's doing such a bad job, or the intelligence services, I just don't see in other words, typically the conspiracy theory would be Putin let this happen because he wanted to, do what? Rally the country? It makes him look weak. Yeah, and he just lost half of his nuclear bomber force. That's not very good. I mean, it puts Russia in danger. Yeah, I don't think he knew. I don't think he did. Just because I can't think of in any way he's able to use this to his advantage. It's, you know what I mean? Like Pearl Harbor, the conspiracy theory is, right, that Roosevelt let Pearl Harbor happen because he could then use it to get America into World War II, which he always wanted. Okay, that at least is a conspiracy theory that has an explanation, but I can't figure out the explanation of what Putin gets out of this if he were to let it happen. I mean, to know and dismiss the possibility, I mean, who knows, right? Who knows? Or maybe they did find one of the trailers. I don't think they did. It doesn't sound like they did find anything. Very interesting. Why doesn't Ukraine just take Putin out? Because that would be going too far. Then you run the risk of Russia using nukes, for example, dropping a nuke on the Ukrainian palace or something. I think that gets dangerous. Yeah. And the second point is, who's next? Typically, and it's funny because this is something, I studied. My Georgetown reunion was this weekend. Thank you, Bill. I went to the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown, did my master's in science and foreign service, which is basically international public policy. Georgetown's got pretty much the best program in the world for it. And one of the things they teach you is, well, it's funny to even say this because it sounds so crazy to tell you this, but you have to learn this stuff. Don't assassinate somebody unless you know who's coming next, or overthrow a leader. You don't want to overthrow a leader unless you know who and what is coming next. You want to make sure that what follows will be better. Some dictators, for example, hold countries together. And when the dictator leaves, the country falls apart. Iraq certainly fell apart to a degree. Libya fell apart to a degree. The Soviet Union, I mean, the Soviets, the Soviet dictatorship held the Soviet Union together, right? I mean, we know that. The Soviet Union fell apart. No, this wasn't a dictator, but it was a dictatorship in the Soviet Union. Yugoslavia, as Austin said, Yugoslavia fell into, is it 5 different countries, 6 maybe, and turned into civil war. Bosnia and Serbia, and I can't even remember what was going on with the other guys, whether it was Croatia or whatever, but there were like multiple wars going on that were very bad. So yeah, You want to be careful taking out a dictator because you don't know who's coming next. And you don't know what's coming next if the country's going to fall apart. And falling apart could be a lot worse than the guy who's in charge now. Second of all, who's coming next? Is the next guy going to be even worse? Oh, Slovenia. That's right. Slovenia too. Yep. Is the next guy going to be worse? Thank you, Storm Rider. Thank you, Milko. Herzegovina. Oh, that's right. Herzegovina too. Yep. Macedonia. Oh, that's right. Macedonia. I'm like forgetting all the different states that came out of it. Right. I know Kosovo, Serbia. But who's going to come next? Is the next person going to be better or worse? If they're going to be worse, then maybe you don't want to deal. Maybe you don't want to do that. Right. So yeah, it's, yeah, I do have to respond to that. I have to laugh because one of our trolls on YouTube, Russia's going to lay down the law for this and Ukraine's going to pay. It's not going to be pretty. I love that. Just to be clear, what the Russian trolls are saying today. Oh, thank you for the wings. Thank you, Tarad. What the Russians have been saying all day. Oh, now we're going to take this war seriously. After 3 years and 1 million Russian troop casualties, 1 million Russian casualties, we're going to take this war seriously and we're going to really hit Ukraine hard. Well, my question would be, if you have the ability to hit Ukraine so hard, why haven't you done it already anyway? After 3 years? At 3 years, you haven't bothered hitting Ukraine hard? Like, you have the ability to actually do real damage to Ukraine, but you haven't done it? First of all, of course, Russia already has. But put that aside, right? Russia's already hitting Ukraine hard. So at this point, Ukraine doesn't have a choice. But the notion that, oh, if Ukraine fights back, Russia's going to really take this war seriously. Well, you know what? Putin shouldn't be in power if he's not taking this war seriously. If 1 million Russian soldiers are now casualties in this war, and Putin hasn't been doing everything he can do to win this war, then he should be overthrown and he shouldn't be in power. So I just think it's a fascinating argument, and it's almost it's a crazy argument from the Russian sycophants and the Russians out there saying, oh boy, now Russia's going to be angry. You look out. It's like, well, you mean there's stuff Russia could be doing to win this war that it's not doing? Why? Why would they not be trying to win? Now, on Ukraine's side, we know the U.S. tied their hands, France tied their hands, the Brits tied their hands, didn't give them enough weapons. There's lots of reasons Ukraine couldn't fight back harder, right? But the Russians are trying to pretend like they chose not to fight back harder. They could, but they're just being nice guys and they thought it was better to lose 1 million soldiers because they're such nice guys. That makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. Yeah. So, but it's I'm glad the troll brought it up because it's very funny. Did the Europeans know the strike was coming? I would bet the Brits were told. Callum's here today. What do you think, Callum? I saw Callum earlier. I'm going to guess the Brits might have been told, but that's what I'm going to guess. What do you think? I don't know, Callum here. But even the Brits, if I were the Ukrainians, I'd be careful about it. I'd be careful. France and Germany, I don't know. I'd be very careful though. Sorry. I'm looking at my text messages because usually Callum weighs in by text. Oh, that's Christina. Sorry. Callum did not weigh in by text. Okay. I was just looking here. Okay. Never mind. I thought Callum was texting. Callum was not texting. It's okay. He was here earlier. He's got a baby, so we allow him to disappear occasionally. But yeah, Ukraine was keeping it under wraps. Clearly, they shouldn't tell the Americans. I would not tell the French and the Germans, probably. Maybe the French. And the Brits. If I would tell anybody, it would be the Brits. It would be the Brits. Ooh la 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 la. What else, guys? What else? Exactly. Too many snitches in the West. Thank you, Julian, for the gift. I wouldn't be surprised if the Brits did help. I mean, to me, I look at an attack like this. Now, this is the kind of thing the Israelis would do, but I doubt it's the Israelis. But I see an attack like this and a little light bulb goes off in my head and it goes, England, England. or they didn't inform anybody, as Dave said. It's possible they didn't tell anybody. This could have been such a big deal, but I wonder whether, as Smop just said, whether they needed Western intelligence, which is entirely possible. France is a possibility. Look, I think Britain's a better ally, and Britain's a better in this war. From the beginning, Britain has been bam about Russia. The French, please, let's have peace. And then the French realized, wow, this Putin guy's pretty bad. And then the French wanted to fight. But even then, France really hasn't helped Ukraine a lot. They haven't. I mean, they gave the missiles, the cruise missiles were good, but the overall amount of aid was nothing. At one point, the Germans, I don't remember where it is now, but the Germans had given like $17 billion in military aid or aid, and the French gave like $500 million. I mean, so I would worry about the French. I don't know. I'd worry a little bit about the French. Whereas the Brits have been better allies than we've been. And the Brits have been harsher as well. Like Biden, I would have worried about Biden hearing about this and going, oh my God, don't do it. Whereas the Brits probably would have said, oh, you're only going after 50 planes, go after 150 planes, right? I mean, I could see the Brits being as strong as possible on this, really. It depends. Who do you mean by who, Tilde? Who do I think would? I think the Americans would try to talk the Ukrainians out of it. I think the Germans would freak. The French, hard to say. And the Brits would say, you're not blowing up enough Russian planes. Let's help you blow up more. I could imagine the Brits doing. Thank you, NAR, for the gift. But yeah, they could have gotten CIA help, or again, British intelligence with the satellite imagery and that kind of stuff. Who knows? And who knows? I mean, I don't know. Ukraine's very good at this. Whether they needed help, I don't know. In terms of the technology side of all of this, the Ukrainians are very good. They could have gotten help. I mean, it reminds you of the Israeli pager situation where they blew up like thousands of pagers they gave to terrorists across Lebanon, which frankly was brilliant. Thank you, NAR. So who knows, Oh yeah, this was, and again, let's see how many planes got blown up. Oh, hey, Misha, good to see you. Let's see how many planes got blown up. We don't know. But we, in the next couple of days, we'll find out more. We know at least 14 for sure. That's by the initial satellite imagery, but that satellite imagery isn't all the satellite imagery. It's 14 so far, but there's a lot of more imagery they haven't gotten yet. Thank you, Dave. So anyway, no, I'm telling you, this was incredible of Ukraine. The problem is it might not be enough, obviously. Interesting. Callum, can I repeat what you just wrote? I think Callum is listening. I'm always careful when people text me things. Yes. So Callum said it was RDX explosives by the look of it. What are RDX explosives? So he's texting me real time here. What are RDX explosives? He was peeling shrimp. Okay. Are RDX plastic explosives or C4 or whatever, or a variety of that, or what's the, Callum is always listening. Exactly. Like the NSA. He's always there. It's a C4 type plastic explosive, but a little more flammable. So he thinks it was RDX explosive. So a C4 explosive they used. It smells of British help, which is what I was. I'm not as much of an expert as Callum is, but it smells of the Brits. And they would need help with imagery. So they would have needed help with the satellite imagery. And well, for example, seeing up to date how many planes are on the bases. For example, we don't know how long they had the drones pre-positioned. They could have had the drones pre-positioned for a while, and every day they checked the satellite imagery until the maximum number, get the dog some water, the maximum number of planes were on the airport in the open that they could attack. 1 second, guys. All right, you. 1 second. There you go. Oops. So that's an interesting question right there. Now, interesting. Callum says, I can't see them having been there longer than 3 days. Okay. Interesting. So he thinks they probably put the things get delivered and they sit for 3 days. I guess the longer is more risky because somebody might see it, But yeah, the truck drivers were not in on it. But actually, another possibility is the trucks may not have been delivered until they knew the planes were there. That's a possibility too, right? If they don't want the plane sitting there, if they don't want the drone sitting there for too long, adjusting my camera, for sitting there for too long, then you could wait until the planes are there, and then it's going to take a couple days to drive cross country or whatever, right? So that's possible too. Exactly, Emil. Yeah. In any case, I mean, just amazing. Oh my God. Absolutely amazing. Is this humiliating to Russia? Yes. Yes. I mean, look, Russia has quit wars before because they didn't go well. Afghanistan was a big one. Chechnya, I'm not as much of an expert on Chechnya, but I was reading today that part of sort of the whole settlement with Chechnya was partially because Russia wasn't doing well. It can influence the war. I mean, if your military leaders or intelligence or whatever, the fact that Putin's war just cost them half of their bomber force potentially and puts them at risk of a nuclear attack from America. I mean, you and I know that America isn't going to nuke Russia, but if you're Russian, you don't know that. If you're Russian, you have to assume maybe we will, if you're Russian military or Russian intelligence. So it's very interesting. Cliff is asking whether it would require whether it would require U-2 flyovers plus orbiting satellites, and U-2 flyovers require POTUS approval. The question, I don't know whether it would need U-2 flyovers. I don't know necessarily what a U-2 provides versus a satellite. Although U-2, my guess is you can send a U-2 whenever you want, whereas a satellite, you got to reposition it or whatever. But I don't know whether it would be necessary. And I don't know what the British satellite situation is compared to the American one. All right. Russia has nuclear submarines. Yes, they do. Yeah, they have a triad like we do. So they have nuclear submarines or submarines with nukes on them, to be more precise. Not just nuclear powered, right? But submarines that actually have nukes on them. Oh, wait, where did you go? Misha just moved somewhere. Where'd you just move, Misha? Not to get us off topic. Oh, that's okay. Where did you move to, though? I'm curious. What else? Anyway, so yes, we're talking about Ukraine's attack on the Russian bombers. What can Russia do in retaliation? More drones? I mean, more drones? More missiles? But they've only got so many. They're going to, and recently in the last couple of weeks, they were flying more drones and missiles anyway. They had the biggest attacks from the war in the last couple of weeks before the Ukrainians did this. So thank you, Randy Fred. It's not clear what Russia can do. It's really not clear. Leave this open for the dog to come in and out. Martin doesn't think the U-2s are needed nowadays. Even the SR-71 Blackbird went out of service. Oh, yeah, I did see that. No casualties, no, because the Ukrainians weren't. Well, okay, there were no Ukrainian casualties because the Ukrainians aren't there. The Ukrainians went home and then did it long distance. We know at least some Russians died because they were dumb enough to walk into the vehicle. One of the vehicles was like on the side of the road. One of the vehicles broke down or whatever it was, or maybe it caught on fire. But the vehicle that had the Ukrainian drones in it, thank you, Bowie, and the ammunition, the C4, the explosives, and it was like smoking on the side of the road. And the crazy Russians, oh, you're in Ohio. Okay, I thought maybe you went back to Russia or something. I was like, you didn't go back, did you? What were we talking about? Sorry. I did want to know that from Misha, though. I was afraid he left the country or something. Now I'm forgetting what we were talking about. Oh, the drivers, yeah. So the Russians see one of the broken down vehicles on the side of the road with the Ukrainian drones in it. It's smoking, and these crazy Russians decide to climb. These civilians decide to climb inside the vehicle. Well, one guy literally climbs inside the vehicle 1 second before the entire thing explodes. So there were clearly some Russian casualties. Yes, in the planes, in the airport, who knows? But you know, somebody had just asked. Brian, the military bases were in total disrepair, you mean? You said total repair. I'm guessing you mean dis. Jens is giving a gift membership that Anna got. Lovely. The cargo containers were rigged to self-explode. What, meaning afterwards? So the Russians couldn't get intelligence out of it, or what? Just looking here. There was some... somebody had asked some question that I was going to answer, and now it disappeared on me. Smoking car. I know. I can't show you the video because TikTok would probably get upset watching a car explode with a person in it, which I can appreciate. But hang on here. Oh, do you really think it was as big a deal as Pearl Harbor? In some ways. Oh, Misha, don't worry about it. It's okay. We always like to see you here. Don't worry. And again, and part of the show is talking to everybody back and forth. And whenever I do, I always forget what I'm talking about. Is it as big a deal as Pearl Harbor? So, okay. Some of the Ukrainians don't like the Pearl Harbor comparison. Thank you, Tamara, for the gift. Thank you, Polly, as well. And Tamara again, and Pappy. Some Ukrainians don't like the Pearl Harbor comparison because Pearl Harbor was a Japanese sneak attack on the innocent Americans. This was not a sneaky attack on the innocent Russians. So that's a fair, right? It's not Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor in the sense that a massive sneak attack that took out, the American Navy and Air Force, I guess, Air Force as well, in Pearl Harbor. I remember the video showing both. Yes, right? So it depends what you mean by Pearl Harbor, right? A sneak attack, yes. A massive sneak attack, yes. A massive sneak attack that took out a huge part of your Navy or Air Force, yes. Except Pearl Harbor was both. Pearl Harbor in the sense that it rallied the country, probably not. Pearl Harbor rallied America to enter the war. Is this going to rally Russia to take the war seriously? No, not any more than it is already. So I think not in that sense, but I think it is because people were trying to look for a historical comparison of a massive sneak attack that was massively successful. That would be Pearl Harbor, right? I'm not the military expert, but I'd have to think of other massive sneak attacks, like D-Day wasn't a sneak attack, even though it wasn't telegraphed, right? But something about this is sneakier in a Pearl Harbor kind of way than a D-Day way, right? Also because Pearl Harbor was literally going in and bombing and there's almost no resistance because you're surprised. And that's what this is. They went in and they bombed and there was no resistance because the Russians were surprised. D-Day, the Germans were surprised, but they were there fighting us and a lot of people died. A lot of Allied soldiers, right? Barbarossa I've heard of, but I don't know about it. It's the level of Israeli cell phone booms. Yeah, and it is a comparison to the Israeli cell phones, the pagers going off, It's definitely that too. What else we got, guys? What else? What else? Good question. How far can the fiber optic drones fly? Callum or anybody else? That's a good question. Maybe one of the military folks can tell us. So do follow me. I always forget to ask you guys, but do follow me as well. If you're on TikTok or YouTube, Discord, you know how that works separately. But I need to do an update after this. I didn't do an update today. I was kind of busy preparing for the show, but I need to do an update just to kind of, there weren't a ton of updates really compared to yesterday. As far as the cable spool is, but how far really is that? Is it like hundreds of feet? Is it a mile or two? Like how far do these fiber optic? Because I would think like after a while, the cable becomes a problem. You know what I mean? 18-kilometer spools? Get out of here. Really? Oh, that's insane. 20 kilometers. Okay. That's 14 miles or something. That's interesting. Okay. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. Wow. Okay. That's rather big. What do you think Russia's response will be? Russia's going to send more drones and more missiles to blow up Ukraine. And who knows? Maybe the Russians will get pissed and try to blow up some Ukrainian ministries in Kyiv or something. It's possible, right? So I could almost see something like that potentially, right? Oops. Here. That's a possibility. Basically trying to do something obnoxious back. Russia really isn't building up forces along the Finnish border, Nick. Some bad publications, which you shouldn't trust, said that. What's happening is Russia is building up some equipment, some housing for military vehicles and things along the Finnish border. Russia can't do anything to Finland until long after this war is over, because Russia's not winning this war. They're not losing this war, but they're not really winning. So they're not going after Finland. They can't afford to put any men there. They can't afford to put any equipment. I mean, what equipment can Russia afford to put on the border with Finland? They've got to use it in Ukraine. So they're building like housing for the equipment and stuff. And they're basically trying to, well, A, they're trying to threaten the Finns because they want to threaten, Finns for joining NATO. And B, the Russians do recognize that, or not recognize, but they probably do want to build up their forces along the Finnish border since it's now a NATO border. So eventually, but right now, no, they can't handle it. And as Kevin just said, especially against the Finns. I mean, Russia couldn't handle a two-front war. They couldn't handle two wars right now, but especially against Finland, which has a history of giving Russia a very, very bloody nose. So yeah. I don't know. I'm not really up on the new Polish president. There was an election in Poland yesterday, conservative won, but I'm not really sure what the latest is on the new Polish government and how supportive of Ukraine. Oh, I saw that, but I didn't sort of get the details on it. How the attack is being reported in Russia, they're not. The Russian government announced and said, the Ukrainians fired drones at us. Most of them were taken down. A couple got through and caused some damage. That was what they said. And then they were changing, and the news, I forgot what the Russian news was. It was reporting on something totally different. So the Russian news is trying to ignore it and pretend it didn't happen. Good luck with that. But that's what, yeah. Hey, Al, thank you. Thank you, Becky, for the gift. Oh, man. I would not be surprised, Ocean Lynn. That was a problem before with the conservative government in Poland. Putin's mental health, he's paranoid. A report I read today that sort of the consensus of Western experts is that Putin is paranoid, but that's about it. Nothing else really more about him, that is true. Russia declared it a terrorist attack. That was pretty funny. The thing is, Russia declares everything a terrorist attack, and they declare everyone to be Enzis, basically, like the Germans in World War II, the word we don't use because TikTok doesn't like it. But literally, anybody who disagrees with Russia is an Enzi. Anybody they fight in a war is an Enzi. And anything you do, if the Russians attack you and you attack back, it's terrorism. So, again, you're dealing with lies. As I've said, it's nonstop lies. So this should not surprise us. Thank you, Randy Fred. Thank you, Becky. Exactly. Blowing up planes is not a terrorist attack. Blowing up military bombers sitting on the military base, right? Blowing up a military base is not a terrorist attack, man. Especially when it's not like, it's an interesting question whether it's a terrorist attack. If you went to the military base and you put bombs in the sleeping quarters, is it a terrorist attack? I don't think so, but that's an interesting question, right? Or at least it makes me think a little bit, but it's not wrong though to do. Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Samantha. But literally flying a bomb into a plane is not a terrorist attack. That's literally military 101, right? Oh, we're not allowed to blow up planes in war? Russia? Is that what we're saying now? Right? Thank you, Jen, for the gift. Yeah, I mean, it's a military target, obviously. One of the truck drivers strangled? I don't know. I mean, the Russian military and the Russian dictatorship, I'm sure, is not happy with the truck drivers, I mean, you know, um, what else? Ooh, Alexa, raise the temperature 1 degree. It's finally getting a little cooler in here. Oh, that's true. It's 7-Eleven. We don't want to go too late tonight again because my voice thing, although my voice is behaving. We went to 2 restaurants this weekend that were very loud. So I was like, I'm ruining my voice again. But yeah, we'll go another couple minutes and then call it quits. Yeah, so truck drivers were from the same. Well, we're not today, Sobo, just because I've been trying to watch my voice the last couple of weeks. We've already gone an hour and 10 minutes. Discord we do when it's earlier. We will do Discord again, but right now, because of my voice thing, I'd rather not. Why am I tired? I'm always tired. My dog gets me up. What else? Anything else, guys? Exactly. Somebody's going to fall. Truck drivers falling out of windows. Actually, somebody else did fall out of a window in Russia again the other day. I read that yet again they threw somebody out of a missile. North Korea and Ukraine. I mean, we haven't heard anything recently about North Korea. We know they've given the Russians a lot of equipment and men, but we haven't really heard about the North Koreans lately. You know, there's talk of whether the Russians are massing tens of thousands of troops along the border of Ukraine and Sumy province. Maybe. I mean, who knows? You know, but anyway, I'm going to yawn at you again. Sorry, guys. Yeah, that was pretty crazy, the Boulder attack. Yeah. All right, guys. I think we're getting very close to calling it quits. So yes, big deal, big attack by Ukraine. Absolutely amazing. In the next few days, we should get a better sense of just how many planes were taken out. Will this end the war? No. Will it make it harder for Russia to bomb Ukraine? Yes. Will it embarrass Putin massively inside Russia and the world? Yes. Will it make it difficult for the Russians to project their power around the world? Yes. Will it make it more difficult for the Russians to engage in a nuclear war with America? Yes. So on so many levels, this was a disaster for the Russians. And again, the Russians invaded Ukraine. Ukraine didn't do anything to start it. And the Russians have been trying to wipe Ukraine off the face of the earth. Ukraine should be doing this and 100 times more than this. So this was a very good thing. And it also was frankly just really cathartic and fun. So there's no recap, Randy Fred, because we've been talking the entire time about the Ukrainians blowing up Russian strategic bombers. So there's like no recap because we've been literally an hour and 15 minutes of details about the Russians blowing up the bombers. So yeah, so can we save money not making a golden dome? Well, there's an interesting question. We may need a golden dome to stop drones, right? You know, I am yawning now. Sorry. Oh, stop that. Yes, I saw the Brits are increasing defense spending, although it's going slowly, I thought, but who knows? You know, but good. I hope the Brits do spend a lot more. The Europeans need to spend a lot more on defense. The Russians, sadly, you know, they're not a superpower, I don't think, but they're a nasty power, you know? And they've got a lot of weapons. They got a lot of men. And unfortunately, they're very belligerent. So, and they're on your border. So you're going to have to prepare for them. But they're not a superpower, no. But they've got nukes. But honestly, I'd be fine if more European countries got nukes too, to be honest, at this point. You know, I don't know whether anybody else is even thinking about it. But, you know, I'm yawning again. Sorry. I mean, I know other European countries have talked about housing the nukes. Like Poland has talked about housing French nukes, for example, which is one solution, you know. But I don't know that any European countries have been talking about getting nukes who didn't have them before. You Europeans might know better. Anyway. Beep. I'm making you all yawn. I know. Happy Pride Month, Jocelyn. I know. Get my heart rate up. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Dance. It is true though. Like I think it's also because I'm sitting, and also this part of the show, I'm not talking as much. I'm reading the screens, and maybe it's just like I go fast for 45 minutes and then I calm down, and maybe that's what makes me yawn more too. It's entirely possible. All right, guys. All right. I think we're going to call it quits. We've been doing this for an hour and 15 minutes, and I'm trying to watch my voice a little. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for the gift, Super Hornet. Discord, I'm going to sign off with you first, guys. I'll be back tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern time, US. So do come back. Exactly. Ukrainian news and interpretive dance. I'll be back tomorrow night with more of the latest from Ukraine and also from Washington. So thank you, guys. Thank you, Discord. Sign off first. YouTube, and I'm going to do a TikTok after this because I do need to do a TikTok video or two. YouTube, good night to you all. Thank you. Boom. Gunther's making gay jokes. That's good.